Hello and welcome to the first video in this Bitesize Pandas series. So this series has come about really to be just a little bit of an introduction into how to use or start using the Pandas data analysis library for Python. The reason it's come about is because the last year and a half or so I've spent a lot of time in a few companies in various countries around the world teaching people to get started in programming, really starting from zero to develop applications, web apps, things like that. And when starting to get involved with data and data science and using pandas, some of the basic functionality is a little bit unclear sometimes. So you often need to do 90% of the time the same things. And I thought it might be nice to provide really a very, very basic explanation of how to get going and the main things that you'll need to use. And that's how this series has come about. Pandas, as I said, is a data analysis library. It says here also on the screen, I'm on pandas.pydata.org. That's the website for the Pandas library. And here you can download the library, have a look at the documentation. Here there's the docs link on the right hand side here to the latest version. Have a read all about it, download the library, install it with your Python installation. There's the community, the forum, etc. Really, really good, really, really broad, well-used fundamental library for data science in Python. The actual docs themselves are also really, really good. On the left-hand side, you've got a whole table of contents, how to install, how to contribute. 10 minutes to pandas is really good. Tutorials is good. The cookbook I'd recommend also is really, really good. With some great examples inside there. And there's enough material here to keep you going for a long, long time if you want to read and write it all. Pandas is a library for data science and it uses Python. So to be able to use Pandas, you need to also have Python installed. And not just that, but when you write by installing or writing the code in a text file, in a text editor, and then executing your code as a program. When you start working with data, that's a very difficult way to program because often you need to review, understand where you are in the middle of your code, make decisions on where you want to go with your code based on where you are in the middle. And it's very, very difficult to do this when you're writing programs in the classic manner. There's a solution to this, which is an open source web app called a Jupyter Notebook. You can go to jupyter.org and have a look at these for yourselves. And we're going to write in this series all of our code using Jupyter Notebooks and Python and Pandas. It makes things really, really flexible and easy to understand whilst you're coding. And that's, again, something else that we'll need to install. So we need to install Python, we need to install Pandas, and we also need to install Jupyter. Things are becoming a little bit confusing already. The good news is that if you go to anaconda.com/download, you'll come across a package called Anaconda, which is already pre-prepared for, let's say, data science. And that comes already with the Jupyter notebooks installed, web app installed. It comes with a huge amount of data science packages, one of which is Pandas. It comes with its own standalone Python installation as well, so if you've already got one on your computer, you can still use the one from Anaconda separately. Really, really good, well-prepared, pre-packaged environment to start playing with data and Python. Now, in this video and in this video series, I'm going to use Windows, so I'm going to download the Windows version. A disclaimer here already, I'm not particularly good with Windows because I tend to use a Mac or Linux at work, but I'm aware that a lot of people who watch the videos will be Windows users, and to be honest, if something is going to go wrong or need explaining in terms of setup or something, it'll happen with Windows. Things usually run pretty well with the Mac and Linux. Windows is always where you end up with the issues. So, selecting the Windows download, I'm going to go for the Python 2.7 installation and not the Python 3, and then I'm going to download, in my case, the 64-bit graphical installer. Now I already did this because it takes quite a while to install, but basically I left all the options as default. I didn't change anything, and eventually what you should end up with is in your start menu is an Anaconda 2 64-bit in my case, with some options. Now, I mentioned that we're going to start programming using notebooks, and in fact you can open a notebook straight away, but I'm not going to do that from the shortcut here. Notebook's essentially the first page that, or the first page you see when you run Jupyter Notebook is like a file browser, but just in a web page. And the root of that file browser is wherever you launch by default your Jupyter Notebook from. Now, by default, that goes in your user's directory under Windows. I don't want it there. You can change this as a setting actually in the Anaconda settings, but I prefer to use the Anaconda prompt to do everything, because later on you'll find that you might need the Anaconda prompt anyway for doing admin stuff with Anaconda or installing extra libraries or something like this. And you can see when I start the prompt here that I'm actually in users screencast here. That would have been the default directory for launching my notebook. So I don't want to do that. I actually want to change that, so I'm just going to go to E because I want to go to the E directory in my case. For you, you might want to navigate to wherever you want to run your notebooks from. You might also want to stay in the default directory, but I'm just going to go to teaching and to Bitesize Pandas or Bitesize because I can't spell, and to lesson 1. And I actually want to run my notebooks from inside here. So to run the notebooks, I'm just going to type Jupyter and then notebook. Hit enter, and now I'll get opening for me the file browser screen, which is actually its root. I'll see I'm in localhost 8888 by default, /tree, and this is the root of where Jupyter is running, and that's actually in the path from where I ran the notebook. So I'm in E teaching Bitesize Pandas instead of Bitesize lesson 1, and here you can see the 2 files here that we can also, the 3 files, sorry, that we can also see up above here browsing. And this is my root. I can't go any higher than this. I can't go into Bitesize Pandas from inside here. I can only start here, and inside here then I can delete, rename files, I can add folders, things like that, but I'm working from a root inside here, and that reflects the file system on your computer with your Mac, Linux or on Windows. So what I'd like to do in this video is not any pandas itself, I'd just like to have a very quick introduction to notebooks and what they are, because they're a little bit different to standard ways of programming. First thing I want to do is create a new notebook. So I'm just going to click new. Now I've got Python 2 as an option. You might have Conda or Conda root. If I click Conda or Conda root or Python default or something, just choose the default one if you can, or the Conda root one if that option's available. Click on it, and what you should get is a brand new untitled notebook. Click on untitled to change the name. I'll just call this test and hit rename, and now my notebook's called test. And what we've got here outlined in green, if I click in this grey area here, is a cell, and I can type code, Python code into this cell and then run the code. So I, for example, can type print 2, and now if I hit shift and enter simultaneously, I execute that line of code and I get the number 2 in the output, just as I would normally. I can also make, say, a new variable called num, set it to 3, and then print num, so I can do more than one line of code in a cell and get 3 printed. Very nice and very convenient, especially when you're working with data. I want to show you a couple more shortcuts, which you can do a lot of things from the menu already, but it's very much more convenient to do things later on via shortcuts. The first one is adding a cell above. If I select this cell here, number 2, and just do escape and A, I'll get a cell above. If I select 2 again and do escape and B, I get a cell below. If I want to delete a cell, I can just select a cell and double tap D, and that cell disappears. It's very nice how to move around a notebook. Critical for a notebook are these numbers in the square brackets. These are the order that your program is being executed. Now usually when you type a program in a text editor, you're used to the code being executed exactly line by line in the order it is in your text file, your script. This isn't the case with notebooks, and this is the one gotcha that can really cause you problems if you're not aware of this. There's another one as well, which I'll explain shortly, but for this one for now, let's take this example here where we've printed num. If I want, for example, to print num plus 4, so we get the expected answer 7. That's very nice. If, however, up here I decide to print num plus 5, what will I get? And a lot of people might quite rightly expect that I get an error, but I actually get 8. And the reason is because this is the 4th line that I executed. Even though it's at the top of the page, it's actually the 4th line I executed. You have to see your notebook in order of these numbers in the square brackets here, in order of execution, not in the order you see the code on the screen. It's really important, this concept. For example, if I rename num down here now to 7, and now do print num plus 5 up here, then I get 12 here. because that was the most recent one, 5, and now I've re-executed this, is 6 here. And now if I re-execute this, it goes from a 2 to a 7, and num is back as 3, and now num plus 5 will give me an 8, and that's the most recently executed line. It's pretty straightforward, but when you first start using notebooks, it can cause you some problems. An even bigger one that can cause you problems is this. If I delete all the cells here, and now try to print num, I actually get 3, which is very, very surprising, because you think, but num doesn't exist. Well, it does, because even if you delete the cells, your program is still running, and it's still got all the lines that were executed previously in the order that we saw with the numbers in the square brackets. They're just not visible here anymore. If I actually want to completely delete everything, I have to go to kernel and either restart or restart and clear output or something like this. In my case, I'm going to restart and clear the output, so that I've just got print num on its own with no output. Now if I execute that line, I get the error because num is not defined. If I now define num, I'll define it as 3 again, and then rerun this cell, I now get 3. And this has the 3 in the brackets here, meaning I actually ran it after this one, which is why I don't get the error. And this thing about things being in the memory, so running in your program but not visible on the screen, is another thing that can really trip you up alongside with the order that you're actually running your code. You have to be very, very careful with this. So that's it then for this video. Very, very quick introduction, running a notebook. Make sure you click on save or do Control-S to save your notebooks regularly as well. And in the next video, we'll actually get looking at the Pandas library with Python and the main sort of features and functionality of how we can go around using it. So any issues with the installation, or you haven't understood anything in this video, then just drop me a line in the comment section. I'll try to answer. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and see you in the next one.